Free Kitty by Jane Chess. Jesse stood in his garden in the cold November weather having a quick smoke. It was his last cigarette before he quit smoking. Again. He quit smoking at least thrice a week, the last time just this morning. But usually something would upset him and he would start again. This morning's email from a client demanded a refund because his design didn't use the right shade of teal. Suddenly, a squirrel sprinted along the edge of the fence with incredible speed and grace. Within seconds, it was on the other side of the garden, scampering up the tall maple tree. It stopped halfway up, sniffed the air, and hopped to the end of a branch. The tiny twigs fell a few centimeters under the squirrel's weight. Jesse reached for his phone to take a picture, but remembered he had left it in the house. With a sigh, he watched the squirrel scamper further up the tree. A movement on the ground caught his eye, and he spotted his orange cat, Mia, approaching the tree with a wistful look. He was about to yell at her that she had no chance of catching the squirrel, when, to his surprise, she sprinted up the trunk. Although far from the squirrel's speed and elegance, she reached the same branch within seconds and stopped by the trunk to sniff the wood. Then she followed her nose to the tip of the branch. The twigs sank further down under her weight. Suddenly, she froze, hunched closer to her paws, and looked around frightened. She meowed. Jesse sighed and snuffed the cigarette in the ashtray on the windowsill. He wasn't keen on climbing up to get his cat, but he couldn't just leave her there, or worse, risk having to rush her to the vet. Dejectedly, he brought the ladder that barely reached the branch below Mia and cautiously climbed up. Mia noticed him and turned around, meowing loudly. "Come here," he said, grabbing the branch on which Mia stood. Mia meowed, clinging to the branch as it swayed in the wind. "Don't be afraid." Suddenly, the ladder dug into the soft ground and moved sideways. Instinctively, Jesse grabbed the branch with both hands, and the ladder slipped and fell to the ground with a heavy thud. He looked down. Somehow, it looked so much further up than it did from the ground. His head swayed, and he looked up quickly. He wondered how he was going to climb down. If he had his phone, he could have called someone, but as the phone was in the house, that was out of the question. There were dried leaves beneath him, but he had no idea if they would help. Mia meowed and came over to him, sniffing his hand. Her whiskers tickled him, weakening his grip. Before he could say or do anything, she stepped over his hand, then the other, and jumped to the branch below. In one smooth motion, she moved down the trunk and landed on the ground to the sound of dried leaves crunching. She looked up at Jesse and meowed. "I can't feed you right now." Jesse snapped at her. "I'm a bit busy." As if she understood him, she turned and sashayed towards the house. Jesse looked up again, his hands and arms already aching. The moment his eyes fell on the branch he was holding, his heart skipped a beat. The squirrel was standing by his hand, looking at him curiously. "Please don't bite me. I need help, not rabies." The squirrel put its paws on his hand and sniffed his fingers. He felt something sharp and wet and quickly pulled his hand away. Unfortunately, his other hand wasn't strong enough and he lost his grip. He fell, hitting several branches on the way, and landed in the pile of dried leaves below with a thud. He huffed and blinked in surprise, watching the tree above him. Heart pounding, he raised his hand to his face. There was no wound, not even a mark. The squirrel hadn't bitten him. He raised his other hand and moved his fingers. Everything seemed to work. He lifted his legs off the ground and wiggled his toes. He seemed unhurt, no blood anywhere, no pain either. Still lying in the leaves, he dropped his limbs and looked up at the tree. The squirrel was leaning over the branch, looking down at him. "Thank you," he called. As if it understood, the squirrel squeaked. Then it sprinted up the tree and disappeared.